Welcome to Drunkest Jamie, Jaime Hrobar. How are you?
I am well, Stephanie. Thank you so much for having me. How are you today?
I'm good. I know you said you were feeling a little, I don't know, tense about doing an interview. What did I say? I said, this is so informal. We're just going to chit chat about the most personal aspect of our entire life.
Yeah, absolutely. I am a little nervous, but usually a couple minutes in, I settle in. So
Now you do speak to people, but do you speak to people more about like alcoholism or more about what we're going to get into, which is having a an autistic son?
actually, I speak about both. I speak to men and women in recovery about alcoholism, and I do speak with other parents and advocate for other families with children on the spectrum. So I do both.
Now, is this the first time you're going to be completely combining those two topics, or do you often bring it in?
No, I actually, a couple of months ago, I actually did two podcast episodes and talked about both of those things. So yeah, this is the second time I'll be doing that, and also on my Facebook blog, Homebound and Healing, I the last couple of months I've started talking a little bit more about my recovery because I feel that there are, you know, a lot of parents out there that might be struggling with some of the things that I dealt with. So I've been bringing that on a little slowly, but starting to introduce it.
Now, so you at first were doing your blog about autism more,
Yes,
and how long have you been sober?
I am sober 5.5 years.
Okay, wow. We're going to be talking to your husband on a
Yes,
separate episode, and he was before you because I know you
he
said
was.
he's 16 years.
Yes.
And did you feel any pressure from him?
No. So actually, my sobriety story, can kind of be broken down into three parts. We often talk about what I was like, what happened, and what I'm like now, and you can almost break that into husband number one, husband number two, and husband number three. So my first husband, I met when I was in college, and our first date started at midnight. He had the nickname the one man party, and it should have been a telltale sign of what was to come. There was a lot of drinking, but part of my story in terms of where it all started. Um, I was on a pretty tight leash most of my young life. My parents were rather strict, and so I didn't have much access to alcohol until I got to college. I do remember my first drink, which I always find interesting, right? Because I don't remember the first time I had a soda or the first time I had a burger or an ice cream, but I definitely remember the first time that I drank alcohol, and I was like 8 years old, a flower girl in a wedding, and the servers came around and poured champagne in all of the glasses, and all of the adults took a sip, and then they had the toast, and then they went off and tore up the dance floor, and I was sitting there and I took a sip out of one of those glasses, and immediately I just felt that, and I just loved the feeling that it gave me. And so I proceeded to go around to all of the other tables while they were dancing and drink out of all of these glasses, and I've never done that with anyone's soda before. So alcohol immediately did something for me, and it immediately did something to me, because that night I threw up, I blacked out um, immediately. And so when I got to college, it was apparent very early on that I did not drink like many of my roommates and the other girls on the floor. I was the one that always had to be babysat, holding Jamie's hair over the toilet bowl. What is she going to get up to? What kind of reckless behavior? And I would go and say I was going to, just have one or two drinks, but it never worked out that way. Never.
I mean, it's so interesting how a lot of times we can see the signs in ourselves. I didn't get sober till 42, but as I write in my book, I mean, the signs were there from early drinking. I was also like puking, making out with more than one boy in an evening, all
Yes.
kinds of things where you could look back and go, I can't believe it took me so many years to get sober, but it takes what it takes. But okay, so that continued. So then you meet your soon
So
to be
yeah,
husband.
so I was always like I was boy crazy from the jump, always, always trying to feel validated. And so a slew of, dating and reckless behavior, and had my heart broken at one point. And so then I was like on a mission, to prove that I was desirable, essentially. um, and so I met my first husband, and we had our first son. We had our son, my first son, um, in 2004. And he was diagnosed with severe autism by the time he was a year and a half old.
Wow. What were the signs that you saw?
Great question. And I always have the same answer. When I found out what was going on, well, he stopped talking for starters. He had some language, and he stopped talking. And someone was watching for me one day. There was a car accident. My husband was injured in a car accident, and so while I was dealing with all of that, a friend of ours offered to watch our son. And when I went to pick him up hours later, the woman said to me, have you ever had his hearing checked? And I said, yes, in the hospital. And she said, I'm only asking you because he's been here for hours and he's never once responded to his name. And I was just panic stricken. I could not get out of there fast enough. So I scooped him up, brought him home, and I started clapping behind him, banging pots and pans, nothing, no response whatsoever. Yet when I would turn on the microwave or the vacuum or something, he would immediately turn his head. And so when my husband came home later that evening, I said, I think Jim is deaf. I think he's lost his hearing. And that started a slew of doctor's appointments and audiology appointments, things like that. And I asked a family member if they thought maybe Jim could possibly have autism. And they said that they did. And so I started looking up on the internet symptoms of autism. And I can't remember how many symptoms there were on the list at the time, but he had all of them except for one. I mean, you just keep checking the boxes. And the one that he didn't have was hand flapping. And for some reason, I could not figure out what that looked like. I kept going, what is hand flapping? And I think it was the next day it started, all of the hand flapping. I mean, he literally had all of the symptoms.
Wow, okay. So this was your first husband though.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then I'm trying to think how I want to word this question. So that must have been very stressful time.
It was incredibly stressful. I didn't know how to help my son. We were trying to figure out what the best therapies were. And so we had I'm a bit of a I'm a go-getter, I'm a doer. We're going to figure this out, kind of thing, which is interesting because that really plays into my alcoholism later. I can do this, I'm going to figure it out if I just try harder. uh, and so I found this school that was considered to be the top in the country for individuals with autism at the time. And it was a long process to apply, but he was accepted. Jim was accepted to this school. And so they told us we had 2 weeks to sell our house and get to New Jersey at the time. And so that's what we did.
Okay. And so then what happened?
So when we got to the school, it was explained to us that there was going to be a lot of, oh, I would say a ton of parent involvement in terms of training. So we had training at the school and we had training at home. So basically, you had to be a stay at home mother, essentially. And so there was a mom there. There were a couple of moms there that I became very close with. and one became my daily drinking partner. And she introduced me to the phrase, life's too short to drink bad alcohol.
I mean, it's funny because we look back and we go, that seems like a bad thing. But at the time, it's almost a life-saving thing. That bond, that being able to have somebody to commiserate with and to, I don't know, when I wrote Sippy Cups Are Not for Chardonnay, and I've gotten a lot of flack for it because it glorified drinking, but I stand by at the time, it's only bad if you're an alcoholic. It's not
Right.
necessarily a bad thing to like have a glass of wine. Like, you know what I mean? That's the thing. It's like
Yeah.
we don't want to, not that you are, I'm just saying it's interesting that we look back and we feel ashamed about, or we go, oh, that was a sign. But hey, for some people, they just like having a glass of wine with their friend. And that could be nice, right? Like we wouldn't look at guys and go, "Oh my God, they got together and had a beer every day and life's
Right.
too short." But we're so hard on ourselves is all I'm saying.
Absolutely. And for those that can do it, for those that can have one or two and stop, absolutely. Once I start, I can't stop, and I can't stop from starting. So I am not that
Same.
girl. Yeah.
Neither
Yeah.
am I. I was always the one doing it more than the other women, but when I look back, I just go, I just want to give myself a little grace and go, it was bonding at the time. I don't know. I'm glad I found people to have a glass of wine with.
Yeah. No, I mean, absolutely. It was what I needed at the time for sure. There was another mother that was going through what I was going through. She had been there a little bit longer than we had, and she had paved the way essentially for me. So I was um, very grateful to have someone that could identify, right? That identification is so important in so many areas. Moms with kids with autism, alcoholism, like I need to come at it from someone else's experience, that they've had the same experience that I have. So one of the things I was going to mention was, this idea of once I start, I can't stop. I can't stop from starting. It's not an idea, right? For me, it's a fact. And I always wanted to be that woman in the bar with the martini and the olive, and I would start out that way. I wanted to emulate sophistication and all of that. But in the end of my drinking, I was guzzling vodka out of a Smurf mug, and that's the truth. Yeah, it was this Smurf. It was husband number two's one of his childhood mugs that his mom had saved, and it was a Smurf like sprinting on the cover, and that's what I was drinking out of. It would sit next to the coffee pot in the morning. So I'm not that glamorous drinker. I'm just not, and I'm never going to be.
Well, uh, there had to have been a little bit between your bonding with another mom to your guzzling vodka out of a Smurf mug. But
Yeah.
so the first marriage starts falling apart. Was it from the stress?
Yeah, the first marriage fell apart for a number of reasons, really. But autism didn't help. I often say, I think if you have a strong marriage to begin with, I definitely think that a strong marriage can weather that diagnosis and that life. I will say, I have two children with autism. I have one on the much higher functioning side of the spectrum, and one on the lower side. And for my older son, who is so profoundly disabled, there are things that put you they test you it's so incredibly. My son suffered from extreme self-injury and aggression issues and property destruction. He engaged in all of those behaviors, and needs still to this day needs kind of 24/7 supervision. But there was a period of time where he was engaging in extreme self-injury to the point that he was hitting himself on average 40,000 times a month. So
How at what
10,000
age?
times a week.
When he was
Um,
little?
yeah, so the self-injury started right away. right around the time of his diagnosis, he would bang his head a lot, and he would start hitting himself. He's nonverbal, so he can't communicate, and so there's a ton of frustration there, obviously. And so it just continued to get worse and worse, despite being in this incredible school. We needed very serious intervention, and so we started putting him on some medications and all sorts of things. And I'm sorry. Oh, it's so hard. Sorry. um, so he was working with, world-renowned experts at this school in New Jersey, and the self-injury was getting worse and worse and worse. Despite that, at one point, I had been pulled aside and said that they were going to have to try some additional treatments. That he was one of the worst that they had ever worked with, and so his condition was very serious, and it took a lot of involvement, a lot of stress, a lot of finances. So it was very draining. And so my thought has always been that, and this is just my experience, but I think if you have a strong relationship from the beginning, I think you can weather this thing. I have that today. So my marriage was really going down the toilet. We were having tons of problems, and we had managed to get a babysitter one night, and desperate to really just get out and have a good time, even with things the way they were. My husband and I went out. We had a babysitter, and we thought, let's just do it. And I drank way too much, which was the norm. And on the way home, there was a light that was turning, and I blew through it, and I was pulled over immediately. Immediately, I was pulled over, and I was arrested. I had all of these nevers. All of these things were never going to happen to me. I was never going to. I was never going to drink hard liquor, and I was never going to drink alone, and I was never going to end up in handcuffs. Until I did all of those things. And so I was arrested, and the nanny at the time came and bailed me out. Actually, she came and bailed me out, and she said, I said to her, I said, I'm so sorry. This is terrible. I'm so sorry. And she said, it's okay. And I said, no, it's not okay. I said, I'm pretty sure that in the job description, it didn't say must bail mother out of jail. And I was totally embarrassed and horrified. And then I got home, and now I'm pacing in the driveway because I don't know where my car is. My car has been impounded. I don't know where the car is. And,
Wait, where was your
I'm
husband?
so he went home. He was more intoxicated than I was.
Got it. So you had to
Yeah.
pick up the
So
pieces of this whole situation.
yeah. So she came and got me. I'm assuming that he told her to. And so I'm pacing in the garage back and forth. Back then I smoked. So now I'm chain smoking in the garage back and forth. Oh my gosh, I'm never going to do this again. I'm never going to do this again. And by the end of the night, I was drinking again. Fear sobers me for a minute, until it doesn't. And but the funny thing is, while I'm having those drinks the next night, my head just lies to me all the time. And I'm going, well, you're probably overreacting, right? I'm going from, oh my gosh, I can't believe this happened, I'm never doing it again, how could I be so stupid, this always happens, I don't always end up in handcuffs, but something bad usually happens. And my head is going, yeah, but it was the light, right? It was the light. If the light had stayed yellow, you would have made it. It's the light's fault. And so, like, when I almost burned the house down in my second marriage, it was the placement of the candle. It wasn't the alcohol. And so I these stories that I tell myself about what the problem actually is are unbelievable, really. My life was unmanageable, unpredictable, unbelievable. Period. End of story.
But we don't want to quit drinking. So we don't want the alcohol, us drinking the alcohol to be the problem. So that
No,
is just what our brains do to protect us from the horrible possibility that we might need to stop drinking is to go, yeah, but other people drink this much. So this must have been a fluke that like, and I'll never do that again. I mean, that's what it had to be proven to me so many times that when I
yeah,
say I'll never do that again, I always do that again.
absolutely.
This is why I'm just glad we talk about this stuff because I think more people, it's way more common than we think it is. Listen, trust the amount of emails that I get or messages that I get that from people just like us that look normal and just are not good at drinking.
No, I'm definitely not. And that's something that I've come to understand in terms of my powerlessness, right, over alcohol. For me, I didn't I misunderstood initially what powerlessness meant. I thought it meant that I can't drink. But my experience shows that, over and over again, I do and I will. But like you said, I'm not quite good at it. And so, what I've come to understand is that if I don't have a solution working in my life, I'm going to drink, right? That's what I've come to understand from powerlessness. I have
So,
to be, I have to have a solution.
so that marriage ends, but you're drinking at the
Yes.
same pace, and then
Yes.
you get married again.
I get involved in a relationship before the ink is dry on my divorce papers,
Okay. Yeah.
essentially. Yeah.
Like you do. Sure.
Yeah. Like you do. Yeah. Like I do.
And then what?
So that was a bit of a whirlwind romance. And we had, well, so my drinking started to become a problem in that relationship too. Initially, I'm fun to start out, right? But then I'm a bit of a train wreck. So in that marriage, you know, one morning I woke up and I said to my husband, I'm gonna go look into some 12-step recovery. And he said, you are? And I said, yeah. And he said, why? And I said, because I'm tired of waking up and apologizing for things that I don't know that I don't know what I'm apologizing for. And so I went, and I was very close minded, and I didn't really want to stop drinking either. I just was so embarrassed from waking up in these blackouts and not knowing what I had done. So that was over and done with. But I tried to do it on my own. I said, okay, I'm going to make a commitment. I'm not going to drink. And we went on this vacation shortly after that pledge that I made. We went on this vacation. We went to Turks and Caicos, and I was doing fine in the airport, and then I'm on the plane, and everybody else is drinking. Not everybody, but a lot of people. And we're going on basically a honeymoon, a little postponed honeymoon that we're going on, and I'm like, you're supposed to celebrate on your honeymoon. So, I'll just watch myself. I'm just going to be really careful when I think I might be getting close to, going a little too far. I might get out of hand. I'll just haul it back, I'll just stop. And so the next day, that didn't happen. And the next day, we went for scuba diving lessons, and I had to fill out a waiver and everything. And on the waiver, there were some questions about clotting disorders and things of that nature, which I happen to have. And so I was honest about those things, and they said, you can't go. And I said, oh, okay, which kind of made me feel better because I'm terrified of what's in the ocean. So that was my ticket out of that. And I said, you should go. You should go. And he said, are you sure? And I said, absolutely. You go. I'll be fine right here. And he said, okay. I said, there's plenty for me to do here. And when he got back, what had happened, he found me on the beach, passed out, and he approached the bartender, and he asked the bartender what had happened, and he told my husband that I had. Well, first he pointed to a giant bottle of Patron, and he said, "Do you see that bottle?" And my husband said yes, and he said, "Well, that was full when she got here." Because see, I like to play the big shot. when I'm drunk. And so what happened was I had hopped behind the bar. I had asked the bartender to make me a skinny girl margarita because at the time I was infatuated with the Real Housewives of New York. And I was all about Bethany Frankel's skinny girl margaritas. I thought they were amazing. And so I had asked him to make me one, and he wasn't quite getting it. And I said, you know, it'll be easier if I just show you. So I hopped behind the bar in a country that I don't live in nor work in. So now I'm behind the bar making myself a margarita, and everybody was very interested. So started making them for everybody else. And so by the time it was all done, he handed my husband a $400 bar tab, and I had thrown up and I was passed out in the sun in a chair because that's how I roll.
I smile only because, like, yeah, of course. Why wouldn't you? You're on vacation.
Right.
This makes sense to everybody who's listening right now.
Good. So we went back to he helped me get to our hotel room, and I took a nap, and then it was time to go go eat, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that. I'm not gonna, and by the time we get to the restaurant, I'm back at it. I'm back at it. I just can't stop.
And did he
So
drink that way too?
um you know what with this.
Well, let me phrase it this way. Did he see that as a huge issue, or was he like okay with it? I feel like a lot of
Yeah.
husbands, no shade on
Okay.
them. My
Yeah.
own husband, did not see the signs in me. And I thought at the time, like, well, he's drinking right along with me. But yeah, a lot of
Sure.
I think a lot of spouses in general tend to enable. You don't want,
Well,
it's not a problem until it's really a problem, right?
right. Well, we both drank together, and we both enjoyed drinking together for sure.
So he didn't
I
want to lose
seemed
his drinking buddy probably when,
definitely not. No, he definitely did not want to lose his drinking buddy. That's for sure.
right. So they could
Yeah.
have, because I heard it in what you said before, which is when you say like, I think I want to quit drinking. I think it's very typical that a lot of the husbands are like, why?
Yeah. I mean, I think he
You're fine.
probably, yeah. I think I think I was more fun initially when I was drinking, right? But I always like it just went too far. So I think he liked that fun side of me.
Yeah.
But then I would just take it off the deep end, unfortunately. So but there was one night we had gone to a restaurant. We went out for sushi one night in this restaurant, and we'd gotten in an argument. So we were drinking martinis, and there was karaoke and all this stuff, and we're having this great time. And then, but you never know what you're going to get with me. I I could be angry, I can be sappy, I can be funny. There's just so many different personalities, that so many versions, right, that could come out. And I guess on
Babe,
that night, the angry one came out. Um, and so we got in this fight, and he said, it's time to go. It's time to go. And I said, well, I'm not leaving. He said, I'm leaving. This is your opportunity. Get in the car. And I said, I'm not going. And so I stayed so foolishly. And so I stayed until the bar had shut down, and I wound up getting a ride from a stranger. I got in the car with a stranger who offered to take me home. He was the owner of the bar. I came to find out later he was the owner of the bar. And I was in this man's car for over an hour trying to give him directions to my home, which I was unable to do successfully. He kept poking me in the arm, saying, does any of this look familiar? I live 15 minutes from this bar, and I could not tell him how to get me home. And so he wound up taking me to a friend, a friend of his. He brought me to his house. I mean, talk about reckless behavior, and the dangerous situations I get myself in. I had worked for a short while part time for a gentleman, and he took me to this man's home. I didn't know that they like knew each other so well, but anyway, he brought me there. Thank goodness. But anything could have happened. And I woke up in a complete panic. And I took a taxi home. I was shaking, I was terrified. I like crawled into bed and just like pulled this little sliver of blanket over me. And I couldn't believe that I just kept doing these things. I just could not believe it.
You know, in a previous episode, I interviewed my daughter, who is not an alcoholic yet. No, but she's in college and this stuff happens. This is what alcohol, like, it is a chemical, right? It's like we feel all this shame and how come we can't control it? But something happens to most people. Anyway, my daughter told a story on this podcast very recently about drinking too much, letting it get out of control, doing shots, and then not knowing, getting luckily walked by a nice stranger, but getting walked and them trying to find where she is. And somebody knew somebody that could call her roommates. And, you know, and she's only 20.
It's terrifying. When I was in college, when I mentioned to you that I had my heart broken, I had been studying abroad in England, and I'm the kind of I was the kind of girl that you give me a date, I'm looking for a marriage proposal. I'm all or nothing, right? More is better. I love that you said all of that in your book, and so I had met this guy on a vacation, and we stayed in touch. And I'm going to school in England, and I decide that I am going to, first of all, forget about all the money that my parents are spending for me to be where I am, and I don't tell them, and I hop on a plane and I fly to Arizona to go hang out with this guy and his friends, and we go to Mexico, and I don't do shots. Now they're saying, "Oh, do these shots," and here I am doing these shots, and the next morning, I woke up and he was standing there and he said to me, I mean, I could not remember. I remembered being sick, that I remembered. And he's standing there and he said, I don't know what you were out to prove last night, but you proved it. And he said, and I think we should cherish the memories of your trip and leave it at that. I am so out of control, number one, when I drink, but I am so reckless. I mean, I don't think about any of the consequences, the situations that I got myself in. You can't see from here, but I am 4'10" and 100 pounds. I'm a tiny little girl, so I put out a big personality, but I'm pretty tiny, and I got myself in some very very scary situations as a result of my drinking and my drinking and my self will. I mean, this, when I want something, I'm going after it, and I have blinders to everything else. I don't pay attention to anything because I got a one track mind.
So you're in your second marriage. It's starting to not go well. I think a lot of women relate to, you have this son who's profoundly autistic and you're trying to be a good mom. You're also trying to like manage your anxiety and your stress, and you also are an alcoholic. Like all of these
Yeah.
things, I think a lot of people try to figure out, what, sorry to like totally interject, but I think one thing that people falsely think is that like, oh, motherhood, oh, it's just the stress of motherhood that makes us drink. It's like, no, it's stress that makes us want to drink. And then we drink because that's the thing that we know to manage our stress. That's the thing we go to.
Yeah, so it's interesting that you bring that up. I actually had a lot going on that fits into that. So I when I was pregnant with my second child, I had gotten a phone call that my husband had been injured in a very serious work injury, and so I'm trying to now take, and then I had my second child. So for a good bit of time there, I'm trying to take care of my husband who's severely injured and having to have multiple surgeries. I'm dealing with a baby. I'm handling severe autism. There's a lot on my plate, and so the drinking did get worse for sure. I will say that I have come to realize, that for me, my external circumstances don't really have a whole lot of bearing on whether I'm drinking or not, because I drink if it's a good day or a bad day. I drink if we're having a party or if, I just went bankrupt. I mean, it doesn't matter. I'll drink if I've got hundreds of thousands of dollars in the bank or if I'm rolling quarters for groceries, so it doesn't matter for me. But yes, at the time, I was telling myself, like, this is why, like, it's totally normal, Jamie. If anyone else had your life, they'd be drinking too. So it's fine that you're drinking vodka out of a Smurf mug at 8 o'clock in the morning. Hats off to you, because I don't know how else you would do this. So that's my experience with that.
So
But anyway, oh, sorry.
yeah, no, no, no. So I was just so that marriage, too
That
much
Yeah,
strain on
that
that one too.
there was a lot of strain on that marriage, and there was a time where we both decided to stop drinking for a while. And so we moved. I came to 12-step recovery, and I walked into 12-step recovery, and I thought it was I felt immediately at home, for sure. This time I definitely felt at home, and I was identifying, I guess my ears were open a little more, and I was identifying what people were saying, with what people were saying. Where there was a big problem for me was all the talk of God and a higher power. And I think a lot of that boils down to, I didn't believe in God for a long time, despite going to Catholic school and being raised with religion and all of that. I didn't have a belief. And when my son was diagnosed, and I was watching him, engage in all of this self injury and the struggles he was having, for me, that did it. I just felt, okay, well, I'm certain there isn't one. And in terms of the higher power thing, at that time, I wasn't angry. I wasn't angry at a higher power or anything like that. It was more of, if there was one, I don't think he or it would allow these types of things to happen. So there just can't be one. That was my mindset at the time. And so I walked into 12-step recovery going, okay, I like a lot of what they're saying here. And they seem to be onto something, right? But I'm not going to do that. So I'm going to just kind of pick and choose. I'm going to do this buffet style, as my friend says. I'll do that, but not that, and I'll just kind of make my own little program, right? And do it my way, which is how I did everything my whole life. And so I managed to stay dry for a while. I did get a sponsor, and she was big on the higher power thing, for sure. The first time I went to her home, she brought me into her God room. She said, "We're going to do some work in my God room."
Oh
And
no.
I was like, oh my gosh, I thought, in your God room, it was beautiful. This room was amazing. And I'm sitting in there, and I was so close minded. All I could do while I was sitting there was think of all of the other things that I could do with this room. I was like, you could turn into a yoga room. You could do exit, put some weights in here, anything, right? The amazing thing is, I'm sitting here having this conversation with you in my God room. I actually have a room in my house today for prayer and meditation, which is wild, because I came to believe in recovery, but that came much later. Um, but so I wasn't going to do any of that, and I saw this woman, which I love talking about this. There was this woman. She was covered in tattoos. She was covered. They were everywhere. And on her, she had a big one that said, "No matter what." And I thought, well, I could do that. I think I could not drink, no matter what, except for two things. If something ever happened to my husband, like something in my marriage, or if something happened to one of my kids, then I think I would drink. And, like, who would blame me? That was my thinking. So I managed to stay dry in sobriety. I'm sorry, managed to stay dry for a good bit. I moved in sobriety, and the sponsor said, when you get to South Carolina, she said, I want you to get a sponsor. I want you to be going to meetings. I want you to get back into step work, all of those things. Um, I didn't do what she said. I went to one meeting. I thought the South did not know how to do recovery correctly. And so, I had no solution. I was not living in any type of a solution.
And you
And
moved
so
with your husband?
I did. I moved with my husband and my two children
And was
because,
he still sober at that point?
yeah, yeah.
How long had
Um,
it been? How long had you guys been sober? Like, did you hit a year?
yes, yes. Yeah, we definitely had a year, and one night we were, so I'm sorry, when we moved, we I was a little bit over a year sober. And so several years had gone by. I was not drinking, but I was certainly not acting like a sober individual. I was still trying to fill the hole with lots of other things. The spending was like insane. I was so irritable. There was no peace inside at all. And my older son was still having all of these struggles. We actually moved to South Carolina to try to give him kind of the best life we could, because we really didn't know how things were getting so dangerous. We didn't know how much longer I might be able to keep at it. So we thought, let's go move where it's warmer. We have some family down south, and we'll do the best we can. And in the meantime, he was put on a waiting list for a specialized hospital in Baltimore, Maryland. So we were waiting. We waited over a year for his bed for treatment there. Um, and so we were out to dinner one night. Our marriage was not doing well, and I finally got up the courage to ask him. I said, it seems like you don't really want to be married anymore. Sometimes I wonder if you still want to be married. And he said, I'm not sure. And I really did not know what to do with that. I really didn't. It was terrifying. It was painful. Immediately, um, this is my partner. What's going to happen to me? What's going to happen to my kids if this doesn't work out? And then he ordered a drink, and I was horrified. I was horrified. I could not believe it. And I said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "You're a big girl." He said, "You can make your own decision." And I did, but this is the interesting thing for me, I think, about decisions, right? And whether or not I get to choose in terms of my drinking. So I did order that martini. I did. And the thought I had with myself, there's a little story I want to tell, but the thought I had when I ordered it was, okay, it's been a long time since you've had a drink. It's been like several years, since you've had a drink. You can have this one. You'll just have this one. And, tomorrow you'll get right back on the horse. And that is not what happened. I like to call that my confirmation drunk. And it lasted a year and 2 months, and it was absolutely brutal. And I'm really grateful to be able to be sitting in this chair having this conversation with you. Because again, once I start, I cannot stop. I was obsessing over alcohol immediately. Again, how am I going to get it? When am I going to get it? Do I have enough? Right? All these things that it looks like I'm doing, I'm not present for, because my mind is totally preoccupied with my next drink. And I'm blacking out. I'm getting sick again. I'm having health issues as a result. I'm hiding from my family because I don't want them to know what I'm up to. They know I have issues with alcohol. So it was a fiasco, is what it is. But
But
one
you
of
know
the
what I
things,
want to do? I
yeah,
want to I want to do a part two with you because
okay,
I feel like there's a lot more. We haven't even gotten to the sobriety
I
part yet. So
know. I'm
let's
sorry.
no, oh my gosh, don't be sorry. It's we're gonna have an embarrassment of riches. So we're gonna end this right here. Everybody come back in 2 days for part two. There's so much more to talk about with Jaime Hrobar. So we'll see you guys in a minute.
Feeling like life is good.